I'm going to show you two very simple ways you can build your own NFL power rating systems that will allow you to create your own point spreads for this NFL season. After watching this video, you'll have all the info needed to start comparing your lines to the odds makers' lines, allowing you to identify value each week and make sharper bets with the ultimate goal of winning more money. Now, remember, power ratings is different than power rankings. Power rankings is what we normally see with top 25 college football polls or just any top 5 or top 10 rankings. There's all types of NFL power rankings, and it can be based on anyone's opinion, like the world's biggest Steeler fan who thinks the Steelers are the best team in the league each year, according to his power rankings. But for power ratings, which is what we're going to discuss, it allows you to assign a specific value to each team based on a league-wide calculation. I have two very simple ways we can do this, and all you have to do is just follow along with me and pay attention. Having your own power ratings to create your own numbers for each game is a must for any serious sports bettor, and I'm going to show you two very, very easy ways to do this. Before we dive into it, if you'd consider giving this video a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, stick around because I will earn that. And also, if you're interested in my daily opinion on games for all sports and would like my strongest bets I make sent directly to your phone, just simply text the word picks to the number on the screen. Now let's hop right into this. I'm excited about this video. I wish I was doing stuff like this when I first started betting, building my own power ratings and stuff, because I'm going to show you two very, very simple ways to create your own power ratings, and you can decide which one to use, or you can use both. It doesn't matter. Both are very simple, very effective, and don't worry, it doesn't involve any sophisticated models or fancy computer programs. They're just two baseline power rating systems that are very easy to do. Now, for the first one, we will have to get familiar with YPPT, or yards per point metric. It's one of the most powerful stats in handicapping, and it'll be the basis for this power rating system. Yards per point is a stat that can tell you a lot about any given team because it's used for both offense and defense. Now, it's tough for one stat to be perfect, but if we are looking for a single stat that correlates most to winning percentage, yards per point would be it. The yards per point stat shows you on average how far a team must travel to score 1 point, but it will also tell you how many yards it takes to score 1 point on a team's defense. The yards per point stat is very easy to calculate, but don't worry, we don't have to do any math to calculate it. But just so you are aware, all you do is take a team's offensive yards gained and divide it by points scored, and on defense, take yards given up and divide it by points given up. Or do the smart thing and do what I do. Just find a site that does the math for you. I use statfox.com. The far right column shows the yards per point. You don't have to use StatFox. It's just what I've always used, and I don't really like change. I think I've been using them since like 2005 or something. You can just Google NFL yards per point. Bunch of sites have it. Now on the screen here, it's a website, teamrankings.com, and it's showing offensive yards per point for the 2020 season. So for an example, if we look at the Colts offensive yards per point, 13.7. What that tells us is the Colts last season scored 1 point for every 13.7 yards they gained. If we look at the top, Tampa Bay and Green Bay, they tied for first in yards per point with 12.5. It only took them 12.5 yards to score 1 point last year, and it's no coincidence that the two of the best teams are tied at the top. Any offensive yards per point below 14 is considered solid. Now let's look at defense. These are defensive opponent yards per point, and as we can see, the Dolphins, they finished number 1 in opponent yards per point with 17.4. So what that shows us is that it took 17.4 yards to score 1 point for the offenses who played against the Miami defense. Now, it's worth noting that this Miami number is a bit skewed. They benefited greatly from turnovers, and turnovers will skew this metric, this yards per point metric. But it's just important to know that the higher the number, the better for defense on this metric, and the lower the number, the better for offensive yards per point. Now, each team will have an offensive yards per point number and a defensive yards per point number. You can now take these numbers to start doing your power rating process, and it's very simple. All you want to do is subtract the offensive yards per point number from the defensive yards per point number. So let's go back and look at the Colts offensive yards per point number of 13.7. Now we subtract that from their defensive number, which we can see is 14.7, I believe. Yeah. So 13.7 and 14.7, that'll get you +1. Now let's do it with an actual matchup. On Friday the 13th, there's some games, which should be tonight, hoping it gets uploaded on Friday. The Titans play the Falcons in a preseason game. Let's use these two teams as an example. Now, keep in mind, these yards per point numbers are from last year, and things change year to year. But for this example, we'll use what we got. The Titans have an offensive yards per point number of 13, and their defensive number is 14.8. We subtract offense from defense, and we get a +1.8 power rating number for Tennessee. Falcons' offensive number is 14.9. Subtract that from their defensive number of 15.4, and that'll give you a power rating of +0.5. Now, any numbers in the plus are good because, remember, for offense, the lower the number, the better because it's less yards to travel for a point. On defense, the higher the number, the better because it's more yards the opposing defenses need to travel. So we have Tennessee with a 1.8 and the Falcons with a 0.5. That would give Tennessee a 1.3 power rating edge over the Falcons based on last year's numbers, of course. Now, one more step is needed to complete your power ratings, and it's to factor in the home field advantage. In our example, we have the Titans favored by 1.3 points, but that's if they were playing on a neutral field. The game's being played in Atlanta, so Atlanta needs to get a bump up for home field advantage. And this is where your judgment will come into play. Home field advantage used to be worth 3 or even 3.5 points in some stadiums. The last 2 seasons, home field advantage has meant less. Last year, it's explainable, with COVID, no fans in the stadium. But it was declining the year before as well. And I have my own theory on the decline in home field advantage, but no time for that now. I think it's safe to make home field advantage worth 2 points. But keep in mind, certain situations might call for more or less. Let's use an example like the Dolphins, Miami playing in New England in December in the snow maybe. New England's home field advantage could be worth 3 points maybe. Or let's say a team like the Colts, who are a dome team. Let's say they're traveling south in the heat to play outdoors on the grass against Jacksonville. You could maybe make a case that Jacksonville is worth 3 points for home field advantage. You just want to adjust the final power ratings number for the home teams based on situation. So back to the example, we have the Titans minus 1.3 over the Falcons on a neutral field. I think a full 2 points is good enough for Atlanta or warranted for home field advantage. After all, Tennessee is an outdoor team that plays on grass. Atlanta is a dome team on turf. So with home field advantage now factored in, we have a new line of Atlanta minus 0.7. So that's your number for the game there. Now, once you have your complete number for the game with home field factored in, you can compare it to the sports books and see if there's an edge or look for any type of differences in order to spot value. You'll notice your number will be right around the same range as the odds makers. We have Atlanta favored by 0.7, and as you can see, the Falcons are -1. So technically, you'd have a 0.3 edge to Tennessee. You'll have to kind of figure out how big of an edge you'll want in order to make a play. Eventually, you want to start adding in other factors and modifying your numbers. The more factors you apply, the better. Yards per point is there to give you a baseline and a starting point. And these are your numbers. You can tweak your numbers however you want. And lastly, about yards per point, this rating system, week 1, you won't have a yards per point number to work off of because remember, what we just used was last year's numbers. It's better to start using this yards per point metric maybe on like week 3. 3 games is a decent enough sample size, but more games played, the stronger. But for the next power rating system, this one's even easier, and you can start using this one right away. It's called the plot scale or 0 to 100 power rating system. And some of the Discord guys might remember this from last year. I did kind of go over this, but you just want to start with a line from 0 to 100. It might be easier just to do it the old-fashioned way with a pen and paper. but whatever you prefer is fine. 100 would be the best possible team of all time, and 0 would be the worst team of all time. No teams this season fit in those categories, but you want to just start plotting out teams you believe to be the best team this year and who you believe to be the worst team and everything in between. So the Bucks, who are defending champs, it's safe to say I'm going to make them 90, and Detroit can be 10 because they're probably one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst. And I'll add a middle tier team or slightly above average team. I'll use the Patriots and plot them around 50, which would be slightly above average on a scale of 10 to 90. And now you just want to start adding teams in, plotting them in. Start with the ones you know. Like KC is right there with Tampa Bay, so maybe they can be right next to Tampa Bay or right below them, or maybe you have them better. I don't know. It's just simply start filling in the teams. You can start on the left side. I find that's easier, and just look for the teams that are better than Detroit but not better than the Patriots. And once you reach a team that is better than the Patriots, in your opinion, you move them to the right side. It's all subjective. It's your opinion. Now, this one here I filled out quickly. Don't copy mine. I just threw this together to show you once all the teams are plotted out, the next step. You want to determine a range. And this would just be what you think the largest possible point spread should be between the best team this season and the worst team this season. Your range number is going to be your constant, and you'll see what I mean in the next step. If you think the biggest spread this season is 21 points, then that would be your range number, 21 points. Maybe you think Kansas City, if they played a team like Detroit in Arrowhead Stadium, the point spread would be KC minus 24. That would be your highest possible spread for that season, and that would be your range number, 24. The highest spread ever is something like 27, so you do want your range number to be between like 17 and 27, I guess. But for this, I'm going to use 24 as my range number. Now we can finally create our power ratings once we have our range number. And all we do is take your range number and multiply it by the plot number. We'll use the Cowboys in Arizona as an example because they play on Friday night. So we have our range number of 24, and on our plot sheet, I have Dallas with a number of 43, and I have Arizona with a number of 49. So all we're going to do is take our range number and multiply it by the plot number. Make sure when you're calculating, you put a 0 and a decimal point, then your plot number, just how you see it on screen here. Dallas power rating number is 10.3. Arizona, same thing, range number multiplied by 0 point plot number of 49. You'll get an 11.7 for the Cardinals. You combine those numbers, and you have a line of Arizona favored by minus 1.4, and that's your number for the game. Just like the yards per point system we discussed first, you want to apply home field advantage or any other factors you think are important, to get your final number. And remember, as the season goes on, you want to be moving teams around based on week-to-week performances. You can start, on the left and work to the right, and you should just be always asking yourself, is this team better than this team? And that's where their home will be on the scale. You can adjust your range number as well once you start to get an idea of all the team's strengths and weaknesses, and, adjusting the range number will also tweak, all the teams. And I know there's some people probably watching this video thinking, wow, this is like a really basic, power rating system, but this isn't for like advanced bettors. Obviously, I'm not doing these videos for pro bettors or guys with 20 years experience. This is for the recreational guy who's just looking to, maybe take a step up and take betting a little bit more serious. But I hope you guys can use these power rating systems to improve your overall betting and have fun while doing it. And that's going to do it for this one. I appreciate you guys for watching. And if there's something wasn't clear, or if you have any questions, just feel free to comment below. We're still small enough where, I have comment notifications on and we'll see the comment right away. I'm pretty good about responding. Hopefully one day I'll have to disable the comments because there'll be so many. But for now, my attention is all yours, so take advantage of it. Hoping we can crush this NFL season. And until next time, good luck with all your bets. And as always, may all the loose balls and all the refs' calls go your way.